Well, welcome, Dustin Alexander, also known as Pontchartrain, to my very first Island Time with Wahine. I appreciate you being here. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I am very excited that you asked me.
I am too. So just for the folks at home who may not be familiar, Dustin Alexander, also known as Pontchartrain, is a DJ producer. He's had multiple number ones on Juno, releases on Toy-Tonics, Soul Clap, Masterworks, more. Also the A&R for Whiskey Disco and Love Dancing, which are two of my personal favorites. So welcome to the show. Just to let you know, I did my due diligence. I stalked you online yesterday. And I watched your really excellent Dejun live stream on YouTube. It was so good. Everybody go look that up. It's really, really good. So you mentioned at the beginning of it that you were supposed to be playing Dejun right at the beginning of lockdown last year. And so it meant a lot to you to be playing it that day. So kind of tell me what it meant. Take me back to like how all that happened and how you're here today.
Yeah. So I had my tour planned last year around February, March of last year. The very last real, there was a couple of gigs that I got to actually play, but the very last one that I got to play was a small little thing in London. And the next night I was supposed to be playing at Dejun. And unfortunately that did not happen. The Dejun gig and all of my subsequent gigs got canceled while we were kind of in the air on the airplane. Actually, Trump said, we're doing the travel ban and everything. And so when I landed, we had no idea what was going to happen or what to do. And, it was one of those things nobody really knew. I mean, we all were getting kind of worried, but it was like, who knows what's going to happen. And then when that happened, obviously I called all the promoters and I'm like, I'm here, but I don't think this is a good idea. And they said, yes, it's not a good idea. Like we all kind of knew at that point, this is definitely something serious. So we all agreed that it was not going to happen. So yeah, I made it to London. I had to turn right back around again. A lot of other people, actually Juan McLean got stuck there with me as well. And a few other people were stuck in Europe at the time. And then we all had to get planes home. But I never got to play Dejun. So it's kind of a dream of mine. I love that club. I love everything that they do and what they're about. So
would that have been your first time playing there?
It would have been my first time at Dejun. Yes. Yep. I've played Paris before, but not Dejun. So like it was pretty special. It was actually one of those places that, 5 or 6 years ago, I was always looking at like, man, I really hope one day I get to play that room.
Yeah.
Everybody's got those special spots that you just want to do. And Dejun was one of them for me. So we'll see. I'm sure at some point in the future, I'll be back and we'll figure that all out. But who knows what's going to happen post pandemic, for everything. So it was nice for them to reach out and ask me to do the live stream. And, that was really interesting too, because I've only done like 3 or 4 actual live streams during pandemic. I didn't really get down on the whole live stream thing.
I caught your House of Yes, which was also excellent.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't really want to do it unless it's something that I really believe in. I kind of just thought that there are so many people making so much amazing content out there that's not something I was particularly acclimated for. I like connecting with people. I don't feel like I can give the best job. So, but when I have like a specific sort of task, a place that I should play for and an idea behind what I'm going to do, then it's sort of like developing an idea. And in that way I'm connecting with people. So I enjoy the House of Yes one. I asked, the dancers to come with me. I don't know if anybody who's watching this right now had caught that. I wanted to bring dancers aboard because I think that more than DJs, dancers have been really, and all performers, live performers have been really hurt by the pandemic more than anybody. Because music, obviously it's been...
You can get by without the visual.
Yeah, it's been destroyed, but it's also been changed, But like performing arts, dancers and stuff like that have really had to rely heavily on social media, which is not generating any actual revenue for them.
Yeah.
And their lives have completely been flipped upside down. So I was like, well, it might be really cool for you guys to, I don't know if you want to like join me on stage, we'll just do this thing. And people just jumped at the chance, and House of Yes was so accommodating and they're amazing.
Mhm.
So we set up the room and we did the thing. And for Dejoun, I didn't get to do that. I actually was a couple of other ones. I was actually going to set up in the park across the street and just play records. Like I was just going to play 45s across the street, but the weather was like rainy for 2 weeks straight. So I didn't get to do that. And I finally was just like, you know what, I'm just going to get in the zone and do it from my studio up here. And
yeah, tell me about, I see your setup actually that you were playing on behind you there.
Oh yeah. So
tell us what you're playing on.
Oh, okay. My screen's kind of tilted this way. The other half is the regular studio space. So this is just my at-home DJ setup. I've acquired little pieces and things over the years. So that's just a Rain MP 2016 that I think that's 35, 40 years old at this point, 30 years old at this point. Yeah. And it works great. So it's awesome. I love the sound of that thing. And then it's got a Bozak ISO X on the bottom for the isolator thing. But I really like that one because it's got 6 channels, which allows me to use a microphone if I need to without like bypassing anything. And then 2 CDJs, 2 turntables, and a sampler. So with all 6 channels running, I can use everything that I need to and kind of dial it in, and it's full control, and I really enjoy it. So it's very cumbersome. I don't really bring it out anymore. I used to rent it for people that wanted it, but now it belongs at home and it'll stay at home.
That's nice. It has a home.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed about and really loved about that live stream was you've got a lot of world music influences, which that's personally my jam. So I'm curious, where does that come from for you? What were kind of those first world music influences that led you down the rabbit hole?
So there's, at first when I started dance music, it was all techno for me. Coming from Detroit, it just was what was around me. So I didn't actually have that many world influences at that time. And when I grew up, I grew up playing like classical and basically, the normal way that people learn music theory and stuff. So I had a very westernized idea of music, even when it came to techno. That was the closest thing to world music that I really had at the time. And then when I started going down the house music path, obviously you're immediately exposed to at least some sort of world music stuff. And then I love the way I approach everything is through a learning. I like to dive really, really deep into stuff. And I started tracing back, well, where did house music originate? Why did it do its thing? And I started to try and very rudimentally recreate early house music just to see if I could. Mm-hmm. And then follow.
How old were you when this was happening?
Oh, this would have been like 10 years ago, maybe. So 25, 24. And at that point, I was still kind of, I was still looking at this with fresh eyes, right? Like I wanted to have some parties. Like anybody in their mid 20s, they want to have parties, So this was sort of just like a thing that I did for fun. And I started like recreating music at home as sort of a research thing and doing whatever. And then I never thought anything about it. And
it was a test. Can I do this?
Yeah. And then, I started making lots of, as I, went to crate digging sessions with people and was going to record stores all over the place when I was getting gigs, I started you just naturally discover certain music. And then you see if there's other people using this music to do the exact same thing I was doing. Right. So early house music, obviously, Larry Finger, Mr. Fingers and Larry Heard type stuff is a lot different than Marshall Jefferson type stuff. But that immediately merged into sample house. So why do they always choose disco? And then you're like, well, there's disco. And then there's, what about this other weird section over here? And there's Euro disco and there's Indian disco. And there's all these other forms of dance music from the best era in dance, which is like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, well, there's a giant world out there. And so for someone like me who I feel like if I had been, tapped into this much earlier, I don't even know where I'd be at this point. But I definitely took to like a fish in water with all that stuff and very quickly learned that, people were interested in that sort of thing. But it can also, the world music thing is just naturally What happens when you want to make people dance? I think that like techno is a very specific genre, and house music is a very specific genre, but I really like it when people can figure out new influences through it, and not for the purpose of trying to tap into something that's not been done before. I know
Sure.
that that's a cool thing to do, but sometimes it gets a little gimmicky. You know, people go a little too crazy with certain disco stuff, and like the African high life stuff was oversampled for a while, and then now it's kind of Brazilian music and things like that. But I kind of don't. I've never thought about one specific area of the world for sampling or for playing songs from that region, and I like to stay that way for sure, because I think that it's all going to go through cycles, and it's all great dance music, and it's all going to get there at some point. But when you play something special that nobody's heard before, that's like the best feeling of dance music ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, merging the worlds.
You're following what's speaking to you, regardless of origin or genre.
Yeah. I mean, definitely what's speaking to me, but that completely changes from time to time. And it is coming from a place truly of being open to it rather than trying to say it. It's like I like to find a great song and play it for people, but more than that, I like to find a great song and let it play for me, and then figure out what it's got to say. And I think that what ends up coming, to the decks and through the mixer for people is usually if I think that what that song is saying to me has something to say to them. It's not because I heard it and go, wow, you guys need to hear this thing. Sometimes that's cool. That's great. But I really like it when the music is not just saying something. It's actually trying to inform people of what they didn't even know they wanted. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think world music is the potential to do that, because most people have no idea what they want when it comes to music, including me. They're all ready to be receptive, especially if you're into dance music. So
yeah. I used to dance flamenco, so my ears perked up. There was a track that you played in there that definitely had some flamenco.
That was a Tom Noble edit, actually.
Tom Noble. Okay, I'm gonna have to go find that one.
Harana Tong is the track, and it was I think that was actually put out by Razor and Tape. I just saw Tom a couple weekends back. If you don't know, Tom Noble has one of the best record stores in New York. It is called Superior Elevation. I highly recommend it. It is exactly the type of store that you want to go digging in all afternoon. That's built what it's built for sure.
That's your rainy day refuge.
That's it's all the way in Brooklyn. So I don't get out to Brooklyn as much as I want to. I have to try more because literally everybody lives out there. I live up in Harlem, and all the dance music people kind of stick out there. But if it was closer, it would be my rainy day refuge. It's more of my once a month or once a couple months refuge. But yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up New York, because part of the reason I wanted to bring you onto the show is I knew that, at the beginning of COVID, like, I'm guessing that probably changed a lot of things, and you have since made a lot of some career changes. You decided to go full-time with production, relocate from Detroit to New York. So walk me through that. Like, when did you decide I want to do this full-time and I want to move to a new part of the country?
So my job back in Detroit was as a social worker and working in both welfare offices for a long time, and then in drug treatment centers, working with drug treatment clients, trying to get them benefits through the state and all of that stuff. So I had lived this like very dual life. There were times when I would play a gig in another country, and within 12 hours, I was at work being yelled at or having someone cry on my shoulder or something like that, or just dealing with administrative stuff with your boss. It was like and I would do that all the time, like every few weekends I was going to do that. And it was, you can only do that for so many years. I did it for a decade or almost a decade. And like, I don't recommend it. It's definitely like, it drives you crazy. It really does drive you crazy. And you see a certain life, when you do that job, and you are interacting with people on a way that's a lot different than maybe what people think it is from social media or in the news and stuff. So, while your friends are talking about issues that affect us all, poverty and gentrification and policy and all of this stuff, it's usually from within the framework of a party structure. That's your friends, that's your social sphere, and that's who it is. And I found it extremely frustrating, difficult to try and be a part of that conversation because I was seeing things that
You're
people
living
were
it.
not seeing. Yeah, and it made me feel actually quite isolated and separated from it. And so I decided these two worlds needed to be separated, and I needed to do one as my actual career, and I needed to dive into the music thing because if I had any hope of ever like making this a real something that I could be, for the rest of my life, I had to do it now. And on the other side, I need to remove that from like the party world and stuff and just do that privately without, making that part of the music world. It will at some point, I have no doubt, come back because I did a lot of, fundraising and a lot of community efforts and stuff with the music. But I actually am more focused on that now outside of the music world. And it's brought me a lot more peace of mind. So part of it was because I needed to make a career change for myself. And part of it was also because I needed to get out of Detroit. I think that it's a wonderful city and I love it very much, but I don't think that I don't think it was the place for me anymore. I don't think that I think coming to New York was probably a good idea in the long run. Short term, obviously during pandemic, everything feels like the worst thing because nothing is succeeding right now. But I think I'm here for a reason, and I've already made some amazing connections with people that I just simply would not have found in Detroit that are more interested in what I'm doing, which is production and mostly mixing, mastering, and kind of Rick Rubening stuff. Like people are bringing me their music and they say, I don't know what to do. Help me. And that's something that I do. So whether that's with publishing or with finding labels or with finishing songs or with, and a lot of people are doing that right now. And for me, it's been mostly word of mouth, but it's been very successful. And I'm liking where it's going right now. So, and then obviously I wanted to work on music and put out a lot of stuff. And then of course, lastly, I wouldn't have been able to do it without my amazing girlfriend, Jane, who we decided we were in a long distance relationship. And we decided that we wanted to make the move together here to New York. And that obviously I wouldn't be here if we hadn't decided to do that together. Or if I was here, it would have been in a very different capacity. I wouldn't, we wouldn't be able to be here in the way that we're here right now. It's obviously teamwork helps in a city like New York where everything is ungodly expensive. So
did the pandemic change it sounds like you were kind of building up to this already anyway. Did the pandemic sort of change your timeline for deciding to make the change?
No, I mean, it made us wonder if the timeline should change, but no, it didn't change the timeline at all. This was totally set in motion before the pandemic hit. It really put a damper on my life. She's in medical, so her job was very secure during that whole time. And I felt like I was a crazy person for quitting my job that it was very secure and going full time into this, but the path had already been set. So I really dove into, a very strange and different world for sure. And I didn't get to collect unemployment or anything because I'd quit my job. So I was kind of like, I need to figure out what to do now, like immediately. And it's happened. So I think
the universe was saying you made the right choice. Now here are the things that you've been asking for.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. So life is good up here. Life is fine. Things are just finally starting to feel somewhat normal again. And that's hard to say, in juxtaposition with a lot of other places in the world who don't have access to the vaccine or, obviously like India or something like that. It's tough, but also I'm here for it. I'm pretty excited that at least in this neck of the woods, it's starting to open back up again. And they said by the end of the month, things will be almost fully open. So we'll see how that goes.
So what venues, when it does fully open, what are the first few venues that are at the top of your list to play out there?
So that's one thing that has changed actually during pandemic is both the venues that I would play, many of them are closed, sadly, really,
Yeah.
really sadly. And many of them are not closed, but have been negatively affected. Certain venues have like lost their liquor license for violating very stupid COVID rules, which I'm not going to get into, and like things that are just genuinely bad. And so the venues that are left are who they're going to decide to book, and everything is going to be a very political game, obviously. And I am most excited, I think, to not play around here. I mean, I am, of course, but I'm actually very excited to go out and meet amazing DJs that have been here for a while and paying their dues and have something to say. And I want to hear what they have to say. And I want to know what this city is all about in a way that maybe I have not seen before as someone who lives here, only someone who comes here to get booked and play. So I'm not seeking gigs in New York right now. I am most excited to return home and play in Detroit. I'm very pumped for that.
Okay, so what are the top spots in Detroit then? I mean,
I gotta go back.
I'm guessing it's the same.
I gotta go back to Temple Bar. I'm super pumped to play Temple Bar again, and then I'm all the spots there feel like home. Like TV Lounge and Marble and all those places feel.
Is everything still? Are they all still open, functioning?
Yeah, they are. They are. Detroit doesn't have as many venues as a large city like New York does, and that helped with some isolation because when people were raising money or trying to help, there was less that needed to be spread around, and then also the rent, in a bigger city is exorbitant, and in Detroit, I don't think that was as much of a problem. So it sounds like they did all right, which is really cool. I mean, obviously everybody was hurting, but I couldn't be happier that all those places survived.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm excited to go back there, play, but I'm definitely excited to get back to South America when things are a little bit better there, and things are not so great there right now. That's going to be a while.
Yeah.
So and even not even COVID related. My friend Boss just shared a bunch of stuff with me that there's like police killing protesters and stuff back in Colombia. I hadn't even heard about this in the news, but apparently it's a huge thing. And so like the world's still in turmoil, and I feel very weird about looking for gigs right now.
Yeah.
But South America, Europe, can't wait to go back to UK, Ireland. That's like one of my favorite countries to be in. I cannot wait to be back in Ireland.
Yes, I've made so many friends online, who are like my best buds now in Ireland and in Scotland, and I've never met any of these people in person, and I can't wait for it to be a big messy cuddle puddle in the middle of the dance floor.
The Blue Note in Galway specifically, it's been like 3 years since I've been there, and we were supposed to do something for St. Paddy's Day this year, and I was super excited about that. There's a lot of venues around the world. That's funny that the ones that I was most worried about are not big venues. There's tiny venues. They're really small spaces that don't have big budgets, but they're consistently the best experiences of my life, and those are the ones that I can't wait to play again because. Yeah. That's the stuff that I miss most about, pre-COVID life. And so I'm worried. I'm very worried about a lot of people. And I hope that those are the ones that survive, because after this, it does sort of feel like all the big venues are the ones that are going to make it. And that's not so good. I think that, that will go down a whole nother path if we go down why I don't feel like big venues are such a great thing. But that's my long answer to your question.
Okay. When was the last time you played Movement?
Last time I played Movement, I think it was 2016. No. Was it 2016? Yeah, I think it was 2016. I think it's been like almost 5 years since I've played Movement. So yeah, that would be the last. That just doesn't feel right, but that is true. Yeah, because
so back up a little bit there. I'm guessing that this is going to be airing in the UK mainly. You may need to explain a little bit as a native Detroit person. Give folks a little bit of a background on what Movement is. I've had the pleasure of going once. Anybody who's a house or techno head, if you call yourself that, you have to make a pilgrimage. That's all I'm going to say about it. But I'm going to let somebody who grew up in it talk about it.
So, Movement is a event put on by the company Paxahau, and it used to be put on by Fuse In, which was a Derek May and Carl Craig company that had done it when it was the Detroit Electronic Music Festival, or DEMF, as they called it, for a bunch of years. And ever since Paxahau took over, it has really expanded and become a giant thing in the city.
It's been going on for what, 20 years, 21 years?
Since the original, yes. Since the original festival. I think since Paxahau's done it, I think it's like 13 years or something. Maybe I could be totally wrong about that. It's somewhere around there. Maybe it's like even 15. But so they made it 3 days. They expanded all the stages. They got, big sponsors and made it like a huge thing to highlight, obviously, Detroit music, but music all around the world. So it also really highlights what a beautiful city that downtown area is. So beautiful, right? And the setting is fantastic. Detroit's setting is made for that stuff, because Detroit was made for a lot more people than actually live in it. So when it is flooded with people, it's incredible. The Hart Plaza setting is spectacular, and it has wonderful.
You've got the water on one side, You've got the amazing architecture, you've got huge sculpture, as it feels like you're in this giant playground. Honestly, there are
few other cities that actually have a place like that in the middle of them, and especially right on the water, surrounded by all the buildings. It's definitely the setting. You can't beat it. I think the only setting that could beat that is like in some of the old Eastern European towns with the giant town squares. If they could do something there, that'd be cool.
Yeah, like I was at Pride year before last, in Amsterdam.
So that would have been really cool.
That was pretty epic. I didn't love the music, but it was pretty epic.
The Detroit, they've gone through several different versions of the festival, trying to like figure out exactly where it's best placed. And obviously, who knows what it's going to be after pandemic and what the budget's going to be like. I suspect it'll be great, but who knows exactly what it is. It's gotten progressively bigger every year. There's been more and more people coming. The production value is higher. Ticket prices are higher. The DJs are bigger. So it's just always getting bigger and bigger every year. But I think the real highlight of the festival is actually sometimes the after parties, which
Soul Skate.
Yeah, it's so many, so many things. There's the Soul Skate one is spectacular. I mean, it's like it's something that you'll end up going to, maybe that you didn't think was a big deal. 10 years later, you're gonna be like, dang, that I cannot believe I was at that party. It's like, I remember seeing Kyle Hall when he was like 16 or 17 or something like that, play at this venue that used to be the old Motor Lounge, the Music Academy on Broadway in Detroit. And it was a converted movie theater, and the DJ booth was in the projection booth. So they only had like this tiny little box that they could see everybody out of. And it was this 4-point CV or EV sound system. And it was brutal. It was so wildly brutal techno like party that just didn't, it was just pure. It was like, as the purest, there was
unrelenting.
Few parties that like in that time that could do that, because they really kind of all started tapering off after people stopped being able to do them at certain venues and certain like abandoned buildings and stuff. And that one like really held it, and it was cool. And I was like, who's this 16-year-old kid playing? And he just smashed it out of the park. And then you look back later and you're like, oh, that was Kyle. Like that's so cool that you got to be at that party where he was finding himself. No wonder it was an amazing time, So the Detroit parties, I think you can still find those. I think those still exist, even though everything is, much bigger and more commercial now. I do think that those things exist if you know where to look. And like the Soul Skate, that's Moody Man's party where everybody goes roller skating. That's iconic. There'll never be anything wrong with that. It's always going to be what it is, because he is who he is. So it's amazing, so there's always that kind of stuff when you want to go for a great time. I highly recommend it. And then obviously ask some locals what's going to happen and what's going on, because they'll be able to tap into it more for sure. But
there's a lot of really cool venues, converted spaces, so even in a state of decay, Detroit is a beautiful city just because the architecture is so amazing. So
Well,
like what was the first movement you ever went to? Like how old were you? How long ago was that?
oh my God. The first movement I ever went to was strictly as a party goer. And that would have been in my, I guess my senior year of high school. So that was like when that was a very strange time for me in general, because I really did not like my high school so much. I have great people there. I have no animosity towards them, but it was not a great life for me. My home life was great, but I needed to be out of there. So the festival and techno in general was definitely an outlet for me. So man, that would have been, I guess it was my last year of high school, 2001. Jesus. Yeah. Wow. 20 years ago. It's just like, it hurts to think about. Ugh.
And I'm older than you are.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that would have been like the last year. I think that it was like fusing. So maybe it has been PAX out for like 19 years or something like that. No, that can't be. It wouldn't have been 2000. I don't know. I think it was 2005, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Yes, 2005 would have been the first time that I went. Yeah, okay. That's a little bit better. I can live with that number. 17, so, yeah.
And what did that scene look like back in 05? What were you thinking the first time you went? Because I was wowed, and I was...
Yeah, it was like, I remember distinctly that it was the first time, it was the last year that, whenever it was the last year before PAX Out took over, and it was very, very, very different because they didn't have the production, right? So it was a lot of like stages built up on cinder blocks and like card tables and stuff like that, but like also really cool, weird art installations. A lot less people, way less people, only Detroit DJs and like their European counterparts that were good friends with them on their labels. Like that was it. And there's a lot of people say that it was better back then. Obviously that's super disputable, but it definitely was. It was the energy that people now associate with Detroit, and it was it in its purest form. So there was something very wonderful to be said about that. I think that we're still holding on to that idea. I know that I still, recall that in my head of just, again, I can't think of like years and stuff, but like the scenes of what was actually going on in front of me. Back then it was totally new. I just wanted to train spot everything and thought it was the coolest thing. For me, it was the place that I could actually go and feel comfortable.
So were you interested in DJing at that point, or you were purely going to?
Yes, I was very interested in DJing because I was very interested in record collecting. As soon as I saw that it was a thing, I was like, this is amazing. I just needed I need all of this music. So I was going to venues and actually train spotting the DJs. And luckily some of them were very, very nice. Shout outs to the Detroit Techno Militia, who were always just wonderful people to me. Still, I feel like I've said this story 100 times, but yes, I would train spot them, and then I'd ask them, like, I would tap them on the shoulder and be like, I am so sorry. I know you probably hate people like me, but can I just watch? Is that cool? And I'm going to write down what you're playing. And they're like, yeah, of course, no problem. And then I did it so many times that they were like, do you want to just, yeah, no, they're like, do you want to just come to the record store with us this weekend?
My gosh.
And I was like, yep, definitely want to do that. So I met them at the record store, and that was Detroit Threads, which has been like my main record store for my whole life. Note
that, diggers.
Yeah, they just kept pulling stuff going, you need to buy this. And I still have all the records that they had recommended. They were all classics. For somebody who doesn't know what the classics are, it was like a super mega crash course in Detroit classics and stuff that like people don't associate with Detroit classics today that I associate with Detroit classics. I had no idea. Like Troglodytes by the Jimmy Castor Bunch. Like that's a Detroit classic to me. And now I feel super old because I'm like, oh no, a troglodyte, it's like a classic. And they're like, no, I don't know. I have no idea what that is. And then when I play it, it always works. There's just the vibe around. I mean, that's like, that was at one point that was like as ubiquitous as Charivari track, by number of names, like stuff that wasn't techno, that was Detroit classics, because that was still when, I guess that was like right after Electrifying Mojo was off the air and stuff. And he was kind of defining dance music at the time, and it was very Cybertron-esque, very Prince-esque in the way that it was built, and it was still built up from all of that. So yeah, that whole time period is it's crazy to think about how different it is now. I mean, it is a completely different universe going to Detroit now than it was then. The city was dead. I mean, back then, it's not dead now. It was super unsafe still. Like people pretend like they're cool and it wasn't unsafe. No, I lived there forever. Shit was really unsafe back then. Like it was, and like you just don't be an idiot. But like that's also what made it kind of cool, is because you could get away with whatever. But yeah, so different. It's just like it's polar opposite. It's funny now because people kind of hold back to the idea of what it was, as if it's still that way, and it's not that way. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. It's wonderful to see growth, whatever form it takes. But it is not like it was. And anyone who says that is making that up for marketing, because it's lost to time for sure. And it was a wonderful time to be there, no doubt.
Sure. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about your role as A&R for Whiskey Disco and Love Dancing. So as an aspiring producer myself, what do aspiring producers like myself need to be doing if we want to get on either of those labels? What are you looking for as A&R?
So A&R changes from person to person. For me specifically, I am looking for not just musical things. First and foremost, I'm not even gonna consider it if you're a shitty person. Like that's a hard.
Don't be a dick. Number one.
There are people that I'm very polite to, but I know that in my head I will never ever take their tracks, and there's no reason to like go down that path. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? And that's fine. And because of that, we tend to have a roster of really great people. And so that's rule number one for me. Rule number two would be that it has to be something that has purpose. I think that Whiskey Disco has gone through several different iterations as well. At this point now, I'm sure if Lauren's watching this right now, he would agree. I'm basically running the label at this point in its entirety. And he had different values than I have, but we both agreed upon them, which is why that we're working together for so long too. And his interest in music was different than mine. So I can't say that what you may have heard in the past is exactly what we're looking for now, but for me, it's got to be something that hasn't been done. And it's got to be something that, and it hasn't been done for a reason. It has to have a purpose to it. Like, are you just making this because it was cool and it's fun to dance to? If so, that's cool. So the purpose then is to make it the most danceable track ever. And so if I listen to it and I say, this is really cool, but I think we should be taking it to the next level with this or that, I look for also somebody who's willing to hear that, who's willing to revisit. Be coachable. Yeah, totally. Because I think you're trying to like make the best tracks. So too many times, even us, a lot of labels, but even us put out stuff way too quick. And it's not worth it. It's you always look back and you go, it wasn't ready. And even the artist says it, if we just worked on it a little more, and you got to be willing to say no, and that we have to do it again. So people that take criticism, people that are looking for a purpose with the music and a reason. The newest one that we have coming out is with K-Roy again, which we've done 2 records with him.
I'm a fan.
I am such a fanboy of that guy. He is just, man, I think he's one of the best people we've ever had in the label. Him and like Yves Saint Laurent are like the tip top for me. And there's been others, Thomas Cher and Olivier Boogie. Those guys have always a lot of them have moved on from certain work. K-Roy's like brand new for us and just so damn good. Like he's taken like 5 or 6 different samples and somehow making a brand new, never heard before disco track out of them. And it's just like, I don't know where this kid's coming from with it sometimes. And he's murdering it. So yeah, that kind of stuff. If you bring something to me that's like, how did you make this and what is it? That's
something that makes you curious again, even with all of your knowledge.
Totally. So yeah, with all that combined, that would be what I'm looking for with A&R. And that being said, I will listen to everything that comes my way that seems to fit those bills. I will do that. and try to respond.
Can you speak a little bit to the difference between Whiskey Disco and Love Dancing?
Yeah, it's actually a super simple difference. So Whiskey Disco is meant to be fun bootleg disco records, whether they're reworks or edits or whatever you want to call them. For us, I think the term edits gotten really wishy-washy. I think people are very purist now, and they which I'm not saying that in a bad way. I just I think that's the connotation now, is an edit is simply just a song that's been chopped up, which is not something we've ever done. I don't think we've literally ever put out a record that's just rearranged, except for Patchouli Brothers. Their arrangements were really fantastic and something new, and it was very Tom Moulton-esque, and it was worth doing. But I think they're the only ones. Everything else has been a rework of some sort. So that's what it is. It's like disco related, boogie related, maybe even rock related, something that's organic, funky dance music that's not house, but could go there. It's just that's what that is. And then Love Dancing is house. Love Dancing is a house music label, and that is exactly what it is for. And it's not necessarily disco tinged, just a lot of house music tends to be, because we're associated with it.
Well, we're also in the disco zone still. So
yeah. So the first record we put out, I had made that Burnin' EP, and I made it for Whiskey Disco, and Lauren was like, I think we need to put this out, but it doesn't fit on Whiskey Disco. So we were like, all right, let's make a new label, and that's exactly what we did. So that's exactly how it was born. It was very, very simple. And then he had a bunch of house music that he had been sitting on, and he was like, cool, let's put that out there. So now I think I've taken over that side of it, and it's also going to be evolving. The next records are going to be me and Javant and Delano Smith, and then some stuff by Carlo. And I'm working with a bunch of other, you're mostly European, but trying to expand to a bunch of different areas, artists for house music specifically. It just happens to be that a lot of the European cats are the ones just slamming it out right now. So good.
Yeah. Is there anything that your ear is looking for that you haven't been hearing out in what's being submitted to you? You have a hunger for something and it's just you haven't heard it yet.
I think the nature of what I'm looking for that I haven't heard it yet is self-evident in that I haven't heard it yet. So I don't know what I'm listening for, right? So
you will know when you hear it.
Exactly. I know what I don't want, and that's, I think, more powerful in an A&R perspective. So I kind of do process of elimination sometimes, but I just wait till I hear something fantastic. But also, a lot of that work is done for you when you reach out to people you really, really trust and love. And if you have a great connection with them, then you ask them for music and they're compelled. If you're getting stuff that people are just trying to put out, most of the time it's crap. And if you get something that someone's like, hey, I really like you, I love your label, I really want to work with you guys, this is something I think works for you, immediately it's never, no one's ever lying. It's true. It's always like on another level. And it's like that music is usually the stuff that ends up getting signed. If someone's like thinking about what we're doing intentionally, then that's the way to do it. So
and they're aligning themselves with it and are self-aware enough to know that it aligns.
Totally. Shoot for a label. When people ask me for tracks, if I give them a bunch of stuff and I'm like, I don't know where this is supposed to go, but if you wanted to hear a bunch of demos, then here it is. 1 out of 2 times they're going to say like, no, it's not for us. And I don't really want to do that anyway. I like to bat 100. I like to be like, hey, Mr. Label man or girl, like I made this music just for you. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. And it usually is just for them, and they go for it. And I think that's a great way to do business. So I recommend that to everybody who is on either the receiving end or the giving end of trying to get their music put out. Is be very intentional with what you're doing. Put some heavy thought into what you're doing and try to sit with, be empathetic to the label and the dancers and everybody.
Yeah. I even as just a DJ, when, my email address is out there. So you're getting promos I'm
Oh,
getting
the
tech
promo.
house. I'm getting, stuff that I just don't play. It's not my thing. And
Yeah.
it's just like, what kind of success rate do you think you're having with this?
It's a lot of because we've entered into a new era, which is there's two different types of advertising. There's direct advertising, which is like I'm giving you a product hoping that you want it. And then there's another type of advertising, which is just brand recognition. And a lot of people are just going for brand recognition. So they're just trying to get into as many email inboxes as possible. Because even if you're like, oh God, this is terrible, delete it. You saw the name. And if you see the name like 50 times, eventually, if they end up on a lineup or when they shoot it out to a promoter, they're like, oh, I've seen that name somewhere. Where did I see that name? Oh yeah, I think that guy's pretty big or that girl's pretty big. And like it works. It does. It's like we're definitely into like a brand recognition era of marketing for DJs, which is just like so incredibly whack. And I am like could not be more against it. I could really rant about that. If you haven't noticed, I like to rant. But it's bad. So yeah, just keep deleting. And I sometimes I send messages back. I really do. And I send it just like that. I'm like very nice, but I'm like, hey, you should be more intentional with your music. I run this label. I would love to hear some stuff if you ever have true intentions.
I wouldn't waste your time. Don't waste mine.
Time. Yeah. And most of the time it doesn't do anything, but once in a while you get some people who are very offended that you told them that their music wasn't intentional, but that struck a chord, right? It's like, well, hopefully it does something because we all need music, but we need intentional music. We need real music. And the DJ world is, I don't know. It's like a living meme now. It's kind of like it's a very strange place to be quite honest. So it's, yeah.
Well, speaking of intentionality, one of your tracks that I'm really extremely fond of, and honestly, I can't put it on without like it kind of making me tear up, is the Aretha Franklin cover of the Roger and Hammerstein "You'll Never Walk Alone" from Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you decided to pick that as your source material, and what was that prompt? For anyone who doesn't know this track, it is really the ultimate closing track.
That's exactly what it was intended for. Was to be an ultimate closing track. I'm really happy to hear you say all of those things about it, and that this is kind of what I mean about the intention. Sure. My intention was that, and you picked it up right away. And that is the point of the music, right? Is that you want people to feel emotional, and it is very specific in its purpose. And as an artist, that could not make me happier. So thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, the purpose, the reason I chose it was because I was listening to a lot of gospel back in Detroit at a certain period of time in my life, because I'm not a religious person, but I found a lot of hope and happiness in that music. And so I would go home, and usually before dinner while cooking, I would listen to gospel records. And, some of them are obscure and cool and they're still really great, but you can't beat Aretha. Like, she was the gospel queen. She really was. And so I'm listening to this record, and I heard that song, and I was like, this has got to be the most hopeful track I think I've ever actually heard in my life. And I thought to myself, if you could loop her saying like head up and try to be, send this like message on the dance floor, if anybody was like maybe having a rough night or something, that it would just immediately make you like stop what you were doing, stare at your feet, or look up at the ceiling and just like let it all go. And that's exactly what I was hoping to try with it. And yeah, so that was the intention.
You succeeded.
Yeah, so I took whatever I felt from it. Is just like we went back and listened to world music. I took what I felt from a record, and I attempted to hopefully say that to someone else rather than just show them a cool track. And there's multiple ways to translate because it's language, and that's what that was.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know this track, it is very peak hour, hypnotic house through and through. Very different. Yeah, very different than not disco-y at all. And
yeah, the drums I used on that were actually from Lego Welt. If you guys don't follow Lego Welt, by the way, I would like to give him a shout out for being another truly amazing human. He puts up tons and tons of free instruments that he makes in Ableton racks for free on his website. So if you just Google Lego Welt, you'll find his website.
I'm going to look.
Oh yeah, it looks like it's from like 1996. It's like really, really old school looking and like written with HTML.
Big pixels.
But it runs beautifully because there's like no extra BS in it, and like so it runs very smooth, and he just puts up tons and tons and tons of free music, free instruments, free whatever. And that one he had built, and it's still like one of my favorite 909s to use. I've never used anything that's close to that. So that's actually all the drums in that track were from that thing. So if you want, you can go find the same drums on Lego Welt. It's great.
I will.
By drums, I mean drum machine, but yeah.
Sure. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I want to ask a couple more questions. This is sort of like a rapid fire.
Sure.
So this is island time. You're stranded on an island. You get to pick it. So where would you want to get marooned?
Oh man! All right, let's go for Tanzania. I never been there.
Okay. You get to take one musical collaborator with you. Who is that?
One music. Wait, is it Tanzania or Tasmania? I forgot. Oh my god, that's terrible. You know what I'm talking about? The one off the coast of Africa. Tanzania,
yeah.
whatever it is. All right, one collaborator.
That's Tanzania.
Javant. Yeah, Tanzania. Okay, I was right. Javant.
Okay.
100%. Yeah, no doubt. He's the best man to work with on anything. We jive.
You're gonna spend your time learning 2 skills while you're there. What are they?
Javant's going to teach me piano, and I am going to learn to construct a lot of things out of reed and bamboo-like wood. Those are, I think, the 2 most important things. We'll make a little wooden piano or like mallets. We'll become like the Roy Ayers ubiquity of Tanzania. And I'm going to live in that way. I think that's
awesome. Good. I love it. Okay. You get 3 albums to take with you. What are they?
I think one of them's going to have to be, Sign of the Times by Prince. The other one will have to be Live at the Apollo by James Brown. So that I know what civilization sounds and feels like again. If you haven't listened to that, it's like, oh my God. It's like it'll never stop being great.
Yeah, greatest performer of all time.
Yeah. And then the other one might be,
Sorry if I just flinched. There was a massive thunder crash over here. I don't know if you could hear it or not. But it's raining sideways in Atlanta right now. Sorry.
I think the last one, oh man. It's a tie between Harold Melvin and Stevie Wonder. I think I'm gonna have to go with Stevie Wonder. Songs in the Key of Life. I think that's what we'll have to go with. Yep, those are my 3.
Those are nice choices. Yeah. Something I noticed on your Facebook page was a banner for Give a Beat. Is that a nonprofit organization that you're working with?
It is.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I will preface this by saying I have not been on Facebook for at least 6 months at this point. But I should probably keep things updated, but I'm still working with them. Yes. There was a specific event going on at the time. Give a Beat is a wonderful organization out of LA who attempts to keep people out of jail and also give them something to do when they leave prison through music. So, and poetry and some visual art stuff, but mostly through DJing. So awesome. There are people who donate and their time and equipment to train people how to DJ. Also while they're in prison to give them something to do that they can like actually give their message out. So a lot of them are not just DJing, but, producing and writing lyrics and stuff like that. So it's a wonderful organization that's just trying to help in some way with the mass incarceration problem that we have. So sure. It's a wonderful organization. There's really nothing, there's no detriment to anything that they do. They really are just a grade A 10 out of 10 company. So
that's nice.
yeah.
So are you teaching production online, or you're fundraising for them? What's your
So we were fundraising for them mostly in Detroit, because obviously they're based in LA. So we didn't have a Detroit arm of it for a long time. But then I was doing some speaking sessions. I was in contact with Russell Wardlow, who was a guy that was doing part of their program, who started writing a lot of poetry, and then did this whole series of letters to his son called Prose of a Con, Prose, Prose. And I had done some reading sessions that I guess ended up on NPR in LA and stuff too. And like just getting his message out there. So it was whatever I could do, fundraising or doing speaking engagements or whatever we could do to help. And then obviously getting some equipment and funds over to them. Yeah.
Right on. A couple more questions. So what's in the pipeline? What should we be looking out for from you and the labels?
So yeah, like I said, the next record is going to be Javant and myself, and then a remix by Delano Smith, which I'm very, very excited for. I've been waiting for a while. We took a hiatus both because I had no place to live for a little while when I was moving. That's a whole nother story. Now, obviously, I do. And Lauren Sleazy McQueen, who was running the label at the time, also was moving during pandemic and got a job promotion. And so the label, we just decided we were going to put a pause on everything. So now down the pipeline, we've got all kinds of stuff. So we got K-Roy coming on Whiskey Disco. We've got me and Javant coming on Love Dancing. We've got Flying Mojito Brothers coming. Yeah, on Whiskey Disco, they just killed it. And we've got Carlo, who did a bunch of really cool stuff with Toy-Tonics and I think some Shall Not Fade stuff and things like that for our label as well. We've been working really closely with him. And I don't want to keep talking about any of the other stuff because it's all still in works, but those are the things that we've solidified. So that's what's coming. That's the next basically 4 releases coming out on both of the labels.
Okay.
So
and for you personally on other labels?
Well, I just put out one of the tracks that me and Javant had done that's going to be coming out on our label, remixed. The original version of that had come out on Carl Craig's label with DJ Holographic, compiling Detroit Love Volume 5. So that just hit stores like a week or two ago.
Nice.
And then the next thing for me is obviously on the label. I don't know if I can say it right now. There's another very large label that I'm working with where they took the tracks and we're figuring out dates and stuff like that. I don't think I can announce it, but there's 2 more that are about to come out. But I also have an idea that I will be doing some white label edits soon, or like revisions. I don't really have a place for them. I think they have been done before, but I also think that they are true gems and like they'll go crazy. It's one of those things where like if you put it on a label, it may not do what it needs to do, but if you press 300 of them and that's it, they don't get out there any other way. I think that for the 300 people that'll find the record, it's going to be extremely important. So I'm going to probably do one of those projects as well, and it will not be announced and my name will not be on it. But you will probably know that it's me when you hear the music.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what's down the pipeline for me. And then other than that, it's mostly mixing and mastering. Wonderful new stuff for a bunch of labels coming up. I, again, don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but there is some spectacular new music coming. I will say one of the bands I just worked with, Liquid Monk, they're kind of like this pop rock band out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I really fell in love with their music as I was mixing it down. They're phenomenal. So if you want to check them out, Liquid Monk. So no, I've been mixing a lot of bands, a lot of other DJ stuff, and getting it out where they needed it. So there's my hands are in a million different things right now. I'm producing hip hop artists. They're scheduled to come, later this week, and actually a couple of hip hop artists. That's not a world that I had normally gotten into, but yeah, it's all crazy. Like my world is constant, nonstop music all day, every single day right now.
So what do you do when you need a break from it?
I get breaks because it's my 9 to 5. I get my evenings to myself for the most part, unless I need to like absolutely get something done. My breaks are my girlfriend is amazing. We love living together and we love hanging out together.
That's lovely.
We paint. We just painted some stuff, some canvases and things like that for the house, and we love to go to museums a lot, all kinds of places all over. We'll drive a few hours wherever to go find like obscure museums and really sit and ponder. We love sitting in the park and just reading. And yeah, we both like life in a very calm and in-depth way. And that's how I take my breaks for sure. Yeah, no doubt.
Right on.
Nature too, hiking a lot.
Right on. Okay. I think this is the last one.
All right.
So I am about speaking what I want into existence. So I want to give you the opportunity to tell the world, who do you want to collaborate with? What projects are you looking for? What events do you want to play?
Okay.
Tell the world. We never know who might be listening.
Yeah. Okay. So I would really like to collaborate with some jazz artists in my area that I do not know where they are right now because all the jazz clubs are closed.
Sure.
So I am very much looking forward to learning about and finding the amazing jazz artists outside of the subway, because that's pretty much the only place I ever experienced them right now. And I'm taking down names and numbers left and right, but yeah, I hope that's something that I know will happen in the next year, and I'm very much looking forward to that. As far as where I want to play, I just really want to get back to some really kick-ass outdoor spaces. I don't know exactly where that is yet. Not necessarily in a city. I think in Europe. I need to go to like Croatia or Tbilisi or
Croatia's so
France
beautiful.
or wherever and just be outdoors. I need to play outdoors. My environment for sure. So that is where I would like to play. I have no specific venues in mind. Whoever finds intention with what I'm doing and wants to bring me out there, that's where I'm about it. And what was the last question?
Collaborators, projects, events, anything under those umbrellas,
or
just whatever. It could be unrelated to music. That's something that you want to make happen.
Sure. The last thing is the most important to me. I really look forward to, as I build up my foundation here now again, in the next few years, taking this and turning it into a way to bring music from people who do not have access to the marketplace, to people's ears. So that's something that I haven't exactly formulated yet, but I very much intend that later on in my life, I plan to form either an organization or a coalition of people to help find true art that is bypassed because of the times and strange ways in which we find music, that we live in right now, and figure out how to get them paid. We get music, people paid. Exactly that. That sounds crazy, but like,
no, it doesn't sound crazy.
Figuring out a way. Yeah, no,
it has a value. It should be paid like every other.
The next Roy Ayers is out there. The next Duke Ellington is out there. The next Prince is out there, and they're either forced to be a certain thing because that's what's popular right now, or or
nobody knows about them.
I know too many musicians right now who are like, I don't know anything about sync licensing. I don't know anything about publishing. I don't know anything about this stuff. And I'm like, yo, your music would kill on Spotify. There are so many people sitting at home right now hitting the same tracks in the algorithm who want lo-fi study music. And you're making the next, George McCann shit. And nobody's out there hearing it because studios aren't giving you enough time. So what if we did a nonprofit studio where we find truly great musicians and just sponsor them? We don't do it for profit. We get them published and we get their music out there, and we make an entire coalition of people who's just getting new, great music out there and not having to deal with the current state of BS that we are caught up and normalized in. So I haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do that yet, but I think that's my life thing. And now I think that's what I'm going to end up doing until I'm old.
Okay.
And that's what I'm going to do.
I love it. So very last, when that happens and all the other great things that are happening, tell folks where's the best place to find out information on what you're releasing, what you're working on.
Yeah, I'm going to say Bandcamp. I'm going to say that if you follow us on Bandcamp, you'll get stuff when it comes out. You'll get alerted about that. And Instagram is probably the only other social media I'm on. I'm not on Twitter much. I'm not on Facebook. I don't believe much in social media these days. So Instagram would be the only other place. So you can find me there or on Bandcamp. And I look forward to, if anybody needs anything, send me an email. Send me an email to dustin@pontchartrain.us and I will respond. And that's the best way to do it. All the other ways, I can't guarantee what happens, but I know I should be more connected. But yeah, that's again,
whatever works for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I look forward to hearing from anyone who has anything to say, any questions you have, any way that I can help. I'm happy to do so. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being so open and generous with your time and generous with your listening, being willing to put your email out there like that.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You've been an amazing first guest, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you a lot. This was I really wish you success with your show. This is you're very good at interviewing, and I look forward to the rest of the episodes.
You're very kind. I hope we get to share the deck someday.
We will. I have no doubt.
Rock on. Thank you so much, Justin. Take care.
All right. See ya.